Well, this is Basis 1, Part 4. And we have Sophia here. Sophia? Sophie? Yeah?
Doesn't matter.
Sophie. Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia. Well, we got Sophia here, and this is very important. We're now recording this during the lockdown. The lockdowns, which is Wednesday, the 28th? 26th. Wednesday the 26th of May. No, it is May. Well, it's good to know what I'm talking about. And again, a little bit of humour. And fine girl, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
And the main reason for coming here is because after a long period of time, you've managed to come and talk about some very, very serious and detailed things which are very closely related to James Casboult's material and also other people's material and your personal experiences. Do you want to just give a quick summary as to what that was and what has been happening?
Well, I was a victim of satanic ritual abuse. I lived in the same suburb as James Casboult. I went to the same school as James Casboult, aka Michael Prince.
And where was that?
We went to Deanfield School in Tilehurst. I lived just around the corner from where he lived, and but he went to the same school as me. He was about 2 years below me. I went to school when I was 14, 15. The last 2 years was my GCSEs. But he had lived in the same area as me, and he mentioned a road that was very close to both our houses. I also wondered if, when he mentioned snuff movies, if my abusers had been party to that particular snuff movie he was talking about, because my adoptive father was an amateur photographer, filmmaker, and he used to film and photograph pornography, and it got passed around the group as well. So I was wondering if that group were part of James Casboult's group, as it were, and they were there when he was talking about that movie as well, if they were party to that. Also, my family had the family who I'm going to say purchased me, adopted me. They used to supply concrete to the military, and I believe they supplied concrete for the tunnels and the dams, if you call them that. And they used to do that worldwide as well. And they also were into they were butchers, and they were into pig farming and making pork pies and pork products, shall we say.
Well, what's the significance of that?
Well, I believe that because with concrete there's a patent to mix it with blood for the consistency of the concrete, and the pork, I believe that was they used the pork as a cover, the pig farm as a cover, to dispose of bodies and bone, teeth, that kind of thing, because pigs will eat that, and also perhaps make the products for them to eat, because they were very into satanic abuse, into eating human meat, human beings and babies and that type of thing.
I mean, are you suggesting that the pork products actually were human?
I believe they would have the cover of selling pork products to the public, and then they would make the pies and things, pies and sausages, that type of thing, for them to eat the human, should we say, meat. the sacrifices, and then they could use it for anything else that they wanted to actually dispose of bodies, because I couldn't work out where was all the blood going, what did they do with all the blood, and what did they do with all the bodies and the skeletons, because you can't really, it's very hard to dispose of a body. You can't just get rid of it that easily unless you use crematoriums, which they probably might have done as well. So it's there was a lot of should we say victims. They would use use a lot of victims, so that's a lot of bodies to get rid of, type of thing.
Okay, on that subject, there's the situation where there's a thing called, I think, after meat.
Yes.
And that's human as well? It's human taste to it?
Yes, I think that was the main product that they would eat.
Okay, we're talking about how they dispose of these things. What happens?
Well, they would eat the organs of the humans, and they would drink the blood. And now I think they would do adrenochrome from the victims that they were sacrificing, because they would have sacrificial rituals on a calendar basis. So you'd have a satanic ritual calendar. So that's how many sacrifices we're talking through the year, from Christmas to Halloween to Easter as well. All the satanic ritual dates, there would be a sacrifice. They'd also sacrifice, and they would get their adrenochrome for their rituals, and perhaps not always the satanic calendar either. It could also be just for high days and holidays, but their prized possession would be the adrenochrome, which you acquire from the adrenaline from abused children, or could be even animals, because they want the adrenaline, which gives them a rush. It's a very potent drug.
Now, how is that actually extracted? Is it extracted after death, or is there an energy field that's extracted?
Once the person's put in terror, or the being is put into terror, the adrenaline rushes through the blood, and then they'll drink that blood, which is highly potent with the adrenaline, and that's also killing the victim as well. So it's abuse them to get the adrenaline.
Which is the whole point of the hunt. It's the whole point of why a cat...
Oh, yes, I do apologise.
Why a cat...
well, that's why cats play with their food.
Yes.
With mice, sorry. Yeah, well, they're prey. Also,
that's the whole point of the hunt.
Yes.
To get that excitement, to get that taste.
And I forgot to mention, the family were also part of the hunting group in the area, fox hunting group. So that was, I believe, another cover, because they would do hunting victims, and i.e. children, through the countryside, with the hunting parties. So you got the fox hunting parties, which they took part in. My great uncle was the master of the hunt when he was alive, and they were they were into hunting. Well, hunting a lot actually. It was quite a good. Well, they enjoyed that sport. So basically, one cover was the fox hunting when we were allowed to, but then they still do fox hunting, but not hunting foxes officially. But then there's the hunting parties, which they would do as well.
One of the previous base's interviewees referred to human hunting by non-humans. That's to say, some kind of reptilian hunt with children. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. the humans that would shapeshift into sort of reptile type creatures, call them reptilians, they would be part of the hunting parties because when you put the victim in terror, i.e. through abuse or through hunting them, hunting them, the humans that I knew that shapeshifted into reptilians would take part in these hunting parties. Yes, like a pride of lions would be chasing their prey, their kill. I'm not saying lions get a thrill out of that for eating, but that's what that would happen. And these reptilian type creatures would be taking part in this, the thing that humans are shapeshifted into. These type lizard reptilian.
Now, when you say lizard are we talking Draco reptilian or different types there?
The Draco, it would be like lizard men and women. So it'd be like the lizard, the human would grow in height and become very muscular, very tall, but like a lizard human, like on V or one of these programs, the original V. I mean, the other V, the new V, they did turn into lizard type beings, as it were, yes. And those, it was like an agreement they had, and I'm not saying, and also the lizard type beings weren't always the humans that shapeshifted into them, because there would be other lizard type beings that would come out from, well, there was a house in Whitchurch, it's a big manor house, Hardwick House I think it's called, and there's a bear pit in the grounds of that, and then there's like tunnels from that going up into the hillside, up in the back of the house, all through that behind the village. So these beings would come from there up through the bear pit and join the hunting parties in that area. There's other areas as well that I was aware of, but I know they came up from underground there, or from the river, the River Thames, which flows beside the Hardwick House, that house, manor house. How
do you know that?
Because I saw it. I saw this happening. I saw it happen.
So you're an actual witness to this happening?
Yes. There was tunnels that go from the hillsides behind Hardwick House and that village, Whitchurch on Thames, and the river flows beside the house. The River Thames beside the house, and then they would go back. They would either go back into the tunnels or go into the river that way. There seemed to be aquatic as well. That could go dive into the river or go enter a tunnel opening in the River Thames, going into the river, because they'd probably know where that opening was. Excuse me, sorry.
So what do you mean that they're aquatic? They can swim, in other words?
They could just go into the water. Excuse me. Probably very like what we see as Loch Ness Monster. I'm not saying they were Loch Ness Monster shape, but they were like able to go in the water, swim underwater, probably like a crocodile or an alligator. And so yes, there were tunnels going all around that area, and these tunnels would go, as I said, they would go run alongside the Thames. They would go alongside the River Thames. Therefore, if you see the River Thames goes all the way down to the Kent, to the sea, and then you've got this. The river goes all the way up the country.
Through Oxfordshire.
Pardon?
Oxfordshire.
Oxfordshire.
Well, of course, that's near the relevant bases that we're talking about.
Well, Oxfordshire, you see, my birth father, who I believe was a reptilian or shapeshifted into reptilian. Maybe he got taken over by the reptilians and he just used his body as a vessel. I don't know, but he had a house in Oxfordshire, and there was a lot of contracts to supply concrete in the Oxfordshire area as well for the company, because he was owner of that company. And so he has a house in Oxford. There's tunnels from the John Radcliffe Hospital and to certain bases around the Oxfordshire area. Yes. But that also links up to Buckinghamshire, and then going all the way up to Milton Keynes. And there's...
Why is this significant? I mean, Milton Keynes is a relatively new town.
It's a new super city, isn't it? It's a one of the new type cities. But they had contracts with Milton Keynes. And then part of the group, one member of the group, worked at the centre. It's called the Centre Point. It's a big place where there's cinemas and bowling alleys and nightclubs there. But there was a link to the group to that place. I think it's called Centre Point or
Centre Parks?
No. It's a big...
There is a huge building in central London called Centre Point.
Yes, there is, because there's connections to Centre Point in London, yes. But then there's a Centre Point, I think it's called the Centre in Milton Keynes. It's a pyramid shape. They were part of that development.
Is that near the railway line?
Pardon?
Is it near the railway station?
No, it was a brand new... I'm not sure if it's near the railway station, but it's like centre of Milton Keynes. And it's this big... place where there's cinemas, bowling alleys, the usual kind of supermarkets, that type of thing.
Multi-screen entertainment.
Multi-screen cinema, And then the Centre Point in London, yes, there's links to Centre Point in London, because of course there's tunnels from in London, and you've got Dolphin Square, and then you've got Centre Point
CLC1.
I beg pardon?
Parliament?
Yes, Parliament, yes. So
I think James Casbolt called it CLC1, I'm not sure.
Yes. So you've got the Dolphin Square, where a lot of abuse happened there. Then you've got a tunnel going from, say, the Dolphin Square. It's very like the underground system that we have, but probably deeper than the underground system, and it's not for general public use. So going from Dolphin Square to the Houses of Parliament, that has to be by a river, because of course there's a tunnel going alongside the river in London as well. So it all kind of links up that way. But then you've got the Milton Keynes, Leighton Buzzard, I think that's how you pronounce it. And then, of course, going all the way up to the Orkney Islands as well. And it's tunnels going all the way up to the Orkney Islands.
Now, these tunnels you mentioned were very, very complicated and widespread. Some of them ancient tunnel systems. There's a hub at Manchester, I understand. And these go back to ancient times. And what do you know about all those tunnels? You sent me a long list of tunnels, which practically all over the place.
It's all over the country, but they were there.
I mean, have you been in those tunnels?
Yes, and the thing is, it's like they had new tunnels, and I'm saying the family supplied concrete, but they were kind of the new tunnels that were being made. And how they dug these tunnels out was by laser. it's not like you'd normally would see like they did with the Channel Tunnel when they bore into the rock and everything. No, they use a laser to bore through the rocks and stuff, the rock, to make the tunnel. But they would be joining up with tunnels that were already there, because you've got the Cornish tin mines, and then you've got mining community, the mines that we have, the coal mines and stuff.
But also those tunnels, those counties, are only recently submerged in the last 1,000 years or so. There's 3 counties southwest of Cornwall and the Scilly Isles, and of course we're talking then about Brazil, High Brazil, Cork area in Ireland. Is these all areas which have got tunnels connecting them?
Yeah, there's tunnels in Ireland and Wales, going all the way across Wales, and then you've got to, and also
I think you mentioned Brecon Beacons.
The Brecon Beacons, definitely.
Do you want to talk about all that stuff? And that's
there's
also where Julie Phelps is.
Definitely Brecon Beacons.
Why definitely? How do you know about that?
Because there was tunnels in the Brecon Beacons, and part of the group, one of the groups was a mine engineer. Another member of the group, there was a couple of mining company engineers. You know, they're very clever people, and they would be part of their cover was to be mining engineers, but then they would also be part of the tunnel, building the tunnels basically, and where to put them, that type of thing.
How
to maintain them.
How do these tunnels physically work with the old tunnel system and the relatively new tunnel system?
Well, it's almost like they
the ones they're building right now.
It's almost like they link them up, because they can't just keep digging. So it's kind of linking them up and fixing them. You know, with I presume concrete, that type of thing, maintaining the tunnels. So they've got the old design, and then they basically copy the old design and put new ones in as and when they need it. I mean, the mining industry got closed down in this country, the tin mines, that type of thing.
Coal mines?
Coal mines, yes. And so you've got... those mines were already there, so they just added on to the tunnels that were already there as well.
But the coal mining industries, it's blowing up things. A lot of people are seeing that. Of course, Jimmy Savile was a coal miner, wasn't he?
I wasn't aware he was a coal miner.
I think he was originally a coal miner. Those kind of tunnels are gritty and horrible, and they're obviously extracting rock all the time. What are the tunnels that you're talking about?
They use a laser. It's different, to what we would see as a coal mine or a tin mine when you're boring into the rock and into the ground. They're using a laser, which is a lot cleaner, and it's a big round bore. I don't know what you call it, but boring machine.
Those huge tunnel.
It's a laser boring machine. Yes, they'd have finished the tunnel quicker if they'd used that.
Well, that would expose that kind of technology.
But this kind of technology can go underwater. They would have finished the channel. They would have finished the channel tunnel a lot quicker if they'd used that laser boring machine. Which they have them all around the world. I mean, they have them to go down under the ground downwards, and then to the side. Or
it also depends on obviously the kind of rock you're using, I suppose.
Yes, the rock. Yeah.
I think the laser tunnels are designed so that they make a wall.
Yes,
that's the whole point.
Yeah, they make the wall. Yes, so the laser tunnel boring machine basically. Yeah, would go through like we'd have the wall and everything. It would be quite clean, quite clean cut, as it were. But that can go underwater. So you've got under the deep sea tunnels as well, going under the water. They would use, for the tunnels on ground, they would use these very fast trains. I think they could have been like maybe magnet technology, or maybe some kind of hovering type technology to get the trains really fast. I have no idea.
You're dealing with thousands of miles of trains.
Thousands of miles.
And they're not going to be trundling along at 100 mile an hour.
They went very fast. I mean, it's like not 100 miles an hour. They weren't 100 miles an hour at all. They were a lot faster than that. And
what was your experience in those tunnels?
Well, going on the...
Oh, these are the main highway tunnels, hyper tunnels.
Yes, and they would go under the water, in the sea, go under, that type of thing. So you could go from Wales, under the sea, to Ireland. Or they could go from... I think there's a tunnel from England to Isle of Wight. There's also a tunnel going from England to France, like the Channel Tunnel, but this one is below the Channel Tunnel, or next to it or something.
Part of a much greater network.
Yes, it's like a huge spider web. That's the best way I can describe it. Huge network.
Well,
yes.
If you see a tunnel system like the Channel Tunnel, and these have got huge terminal buildings you get access to. How do people access these tunnel systems?
Well, it's almost like you've got you've got the Channel Tunnel in France or in Britain, and then the terminals wouldn't be where their terminals are, the public's terminals are. So it's like their terminals would be underground, and then they would come up from underground. So everything's
they must
underground.
have cover buildings, or is it like Harry Potter's? The way that they have a platform which is invisible.
Well, not so romantic as Harry Potter, but I wish it was. But it's not quite as romantic as the Harry Potter one. But yeah, probably quite a bit like that. Yes.
I mean, is it like a man from Uncle type of thing where you walk into a little thing and you
go into a phone box or a toilet or something, and then you go down would you call it down a lift, elevator, down underground type of thing. So very like Harry Potter, I suppose, or Man from Uncle. Yes. They make it look nice, actually.
But what do they actually look like?
Well, you got like there's entrances to these tunnels. Okay, you come to like let's just say you come to some innocuous type of building, and it could have signs outside saying do not enter, high voltage, or warning signs, do not enter, it's locked, private, all this type of thing. And if you go in there, then that takes you to the entrance of the tunnel terminal type thing, to go down to get to the underground terminal. So it's not above ground like Channel Tunnel terminals. No, it's underground. But like I said, it's an innocuous type.
I mean, how are you taken in there? Are there some kind of security protocols? If you get it wrong, you get blown up or what?
They don't get blown up. It's high voltage electricity. It's electrocution. So, okay, someone who's going to, by mistake, try and get in would get an electric shock. So that's why they wouldn't, wouldn't go any further with that. You don't get blown up. It's like electrocution or electric shock, that type of thing.
Immediate disintegration, a disintegrator ray.
Yeah, yes, ray, disintegrator ray type thing, yes. And then there's like, I just know of the electrocution type thing. But then, if people were to go even further where they're not allowed to go, there's laser. It's like I suppose you could call it a disintegrator thing, but it's a laser gun type thing which would just shoot out and you're gone.
Was there some kind of device that you would carry which would mean that you were allowed into that I mean,
Well,
Barry King referred to
a
something.
lot of them had like a box thing. You know how back in the day it was like a pager, like we had pages where you page people to find out, that kind of thing. Kind of like a pager box, little box thing like this that you would carry so it could be picked up if what your level of accessibility was, were you allowed in that plot, that type of thing. I describe it like a pager. I don't know what the pages are like now, but back in the day they were like, you clip them on, that type of thing. This black, I'm calling it a box type thing, like a pager.
Were there any identifying markings on those boxes? Any
on the pages?
Yeah, or anything at all?
There'd be like a pattern. There'd be a pattern on the box. It's a bit like trying to think, a square with a triangle in it, and yes, so it would be like a square with a triangle in it type thing.
Could you describe the triangle?
Trying to think of companies like the ones with the triangle company thing, but it's like trying to think. It's like on Taken, there's that writing that they had, or hieroglyphic. That's what I would call it. Describe it more like a hieroglyph type shape, and it would look like a hieroglyph, like you got in the Egyptian pyramids and on the walls and stuff. So it's like a square with a triangle in it, pyramid type thing inside the square. And then the pyramid would be a solid colour, and then the square behind it would be white, and then you've got the pyramid on top, which was red, a red type of pyramid on top of the square, inside the square, sorry. So red on top.
And were there any other things like colours and things like that which you could use to identify who was more important than the other, or anything like that?
Well, it was more like what I saw. You had the navy blue, red or green, and purple. So the various people or beings that would be going in and out of these tunnels would have different coloured. So you'd have a red triangle, or you'd have a purple one, green, and blue, navy blue. I'm going to call it navy blue. And the green wasn't like it was more like a teal green, maybe more like this, or a bit greener than this as well. And it would be like, depending on the level of standing or the person was depending on the colour. So the certain colours would get you to certain areas, into certain tunnels or something like that. Okay, so sometimes there were some places I couldn't go. I wasn't taken to. But the person who could go would have a higher ranking, so they would have more of the gold yellow triangle, and then the ones that were lower had the different colours, like the red and the green and the navy blue. The gold ones were the higher ranking, and I was never taken to those places. The triangle was probably more like a pyramid triangle type thing.
Was it something a bit which gave certain types of people access, and certain? I mean, what were they bringing you around? They weren't bringing you there to show you the tunnels,
no.
and what it was like. Sort of give us a tour of the whole network. What were they bringing you there for?
I was being taken there to certain levels to be, I'm going to call it monitored, to be tested, to be looked at, prodded, poked, that type of thing. I don't quite know what they were looking for. We would go into like I call it a laboratory type room.
Could you describe those in any way at all?
The laboratory room type thing.
Anything. The
it
corridors.
Would be like a medical...
I'm looking for any kind of signatures or language.
It was like a medical... Okay, it was like a stainless steel room. And it was almost like, I'd describe it like a dental surgery where the dentist goes. There would be a chair, like a dental chair. I mean, I used to work in a dental surgery, so I know what they look like. But this wasn't like... these chairs were far more advanced than the dental chairs we have these days in dental surgeries. This chair was far more advanced, far more... has a far more electronic things to it than, say, a dental chair. Dental chairs are quite basic, obviously. So this would be a very high-tech kind of chair, like a dental chair, sorry, yeah. And that's the best way I can describe it, because it would be like you can go back and forward and back, that kind of thing, strapped into it, your legs strapped down, arms strapped to the armrests and things. Then there'd be a thing that would come above the head, come down onto the head, or just above the head. They would be scanning the body, scanning the person, or me, I should say, because it would be me that I'd be doing this.
Is this a thing called the trip seat?
They never called it a trip seat to me. It would be just a chair, just get in the chair type of thing. They've never called it a trip seat to me, but probably.
I mean, did they use that term? Or have you just heard of it because I've just said it?
No, I have heard of the term before. You said that. Yeah. But they never called it that to me type of thing. And then, you know the film The Flight of the Navigator, where the little boy goes into the spacecraft and the inside is all silver and he sits in that chair, the navigator chair, with all the silver and everything. It was kind of like that. The room was kind of like that film, The Flight of the Navigator, inside the spaceship. So it's all very metal around the room and things. I don't know the significance of it being metal, unless it was like could have been like a Faraday cage or something, or more of a sort of transmitter type environment or something like that. But there would be symbols on the walls of this room. You've got the seat, and then you've got the symbols on the walls of this room with raised symbols, shall I say, on the walls of the room. And it was like symbols like, I'm going to call it like hieroglyphs, but not quite the same as the Egyptian hieroglyphs with the animals and things. It was more like Roman numerals and shapes. That's the best way of describing it, shapes and things. And you know, you've got a lot of logos for companies. You know, nowadays there's lots of logos and stuff using these kind of symbols and things.
I think you mentioned chevrons in the last part.
Oh, chevrons. So that was on the uniforms of the beings that were there, and the humans that were there, and then you've got the beings as well.
And what are the beings? Describe them in detail and the uniforms.
Did you say what were the beings?
Yeah.
Well, there were lizard, reptilian type beings. There was the blue type beings as well.
Are these aliens or something?
Yes, like there were aliens. There were blue aliens, Then you had the...
No, I said avians. There's a race of avian.
I
Bird-like or something.
Well, there's the blue ones, and then you've got the reptilian type, then the greys, and then you had the very tall white aliens type beings, and then you had the ones that you would call they're long blonde hair, very, very tall, blue eyes, striking blue eyes. And then there'd be the well, I suppose you could call them like a type of bird, but it was like it was more like the dark crystal. I'll mention that again, but they were like that, but they weren't really quite bird-like. They were bird-like, but they didn't have feathers, on they weren't like that. They're kind of shaped like a bird, but not kind of like the birds we know.
Are there any of the hieroglyphs in Egypt who would you be able to point to that? Because some very strange people but shown in those hieroglyphs.
So the hieroglyphs in
the Egyptian hieroglyphs and the type of bird talk or bird men.
But bird men.
Yeah,
they
look people. Like birds or bird people. Yeah.
Oh, the bird people.
They have a head.
Yes, like that. They didn't have feathers, but they were like bird people type things. So they'd have a beak like a bird. Yes, like the hieroglyphs in the pyramids. But then also you had the beetle type men, women, beings. They had a beetle head on the head, like a stag, like a stag beetle head, and it was. But
not a body. I mean, what was a body
have
like?
a human body and a beetle head. Yeah, so is it not a stag? But stag beetle, with the
stag
claws.
Beetle. Yeah.
Yes, like that.
I think there's a particular type of Egyptian beetle which escapes me, but it's very important. Scarab beetle, I think.
Oh, there was scarab beetle kind of beings, which was like a human body, and then the scarab beetle head joined together. Same with the birds. Beings, and a lot of things were kind of hybrids that were joined together. Mix it with spiders. There were spider type people.
Arachnids,
yes. And they were
What's
human.
Your experience with arachnids?
Well, the spiders, the spider kind of aliens that were there, they weren't really they weren't as aggressive as, say, the lizard type alien beings as well. The spiders were very kind of they weren't aggressive. They kind of minded their own business, actually, because then you had the other ones.
What sort of size are you dealing with?
Oh, the spider things were huge. Like I think it was trying to think of the film, not a film, sorry, but there were just huge spiders, massive spiders, but they weren't like aggressive. They used to, make webs, that type. Well, the silk, they had that. It's like a spider, and it's but they were massive, and I think.
When you say massive, what sort of size?
Well, it's kind of like it would probably fill a room. The spider would fill a room. Yeah, you'd have would it be female spider? Because the female spider would eat the male spiders, and if you've got you could look at Harry Potter, there was a huge spider in that. I think there was another huge spider in something like Doctor Who or Torchwood or something. The huge spider there. I can't remember the the basis of the program, but I know there was huge spiders and there's been a lot of huge spiders in a lot of films and science fiction films, that type of thing. But these spiders were huge. They were like I say, fill a room, massive.
So under what circumstances did you meet those spider beings?
Well, it would be walking past. They would be in like a cavern, a cave type thing, which they crawl into. I call it a cave, but it was in the rock, that type of thing. That would be their tunnel system, actually, their tunnel system. No one really went down there, so as you walk past, they would be sitting there, but it wasn't like I would be taken into there with them at all, no. But they would come out and things. They'd like the dark, like spiders do on the earth type of thing, above. But they would be in these like caverns. I call it a cavern, a cave. That was their tunnel system, a bit like a rabbit's tunnel system. That would be with their part of the thing.
What is your raison d'etre? What are they doing? What are you doing there? What's happening with that regard?
Well, I'd be going to the place. There's this clinical, like dental type surgery, medical room, all silver and everything. Then they put me in the chair. They have the thing above my head, and then it would be like scanning me, from my head down here type of thing. And then I'd be asked questions, but it wouldn't be talking out loud, it would be talking in the brain, so telepathic. So it was tests, so they'd say things like, in my brain, what colour can you see on the screen, or what shapes on the screen, and then I'd think the answer. So I could hear myself say the answer in my head, and then give the answer that way. And it would either be you get a buzz saying yes or no. So it'd be like, what shape's on the screen now? And then I'd think it and say it in my head to this, do that really. And I'd get a yes or a no. It was kind of like testing those abilities of mine to do telepathy. They would be testing my telepathic skills and have conversations with me. So as I was speaking in my mind, the writing would come up on the screen. So they'd say, well, read what's on the screen, so I would. And then say it in my brain, and then another screen would put what I was thinking on the screen and write it down. There would be a finger clip thing that they would put on my fingers like this. So I'd sit there with these clips on my fingers. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Then I'd be thinking things, and it would be showing up on the screen next to me, what I was thinking in writing. Then they'd ask me, then I'd have to do the telepathic kind of skills that way. Then there would be the one where they would test me to use the skills to move things with my mind. So I'd be looking at something and then physically move it across the table or something. I mean, that's not all in this dental chair thing, because that would be across the room. There'd be a table and a chair, and I'd sit on there, and then they'd ask me to, the word I've forgotten at the moment, they'd ask me to move stuff with my brain, looking at it, and get it to move across the table, or lift off the table, or bend. So bending metal, spoons, that kind of thing, with my mind. Then they test me for equations. Now I wasn't very good at maths when I went to school, but when I was there, I was really good at maths. they'd ask me equations, mathematical equations. But when I was at school, during my normal life, I couldn't do maths to save my life.
Were you given any kind of special drugs? And if so, how were they given?
All I know is I had these things on my fingers. Yeah, they'd give me a drink. Yes, like a drink. They'd drink that and I'd have to drink that type of thing. That was apparently to heighten my abilities or something. It was a different colour. It was a coloured drink.
What sort of colour?
It was like a more like a blue drink type thing. You could say mouthwash, only this wasn't mouthwash. It was to drink. So it looked a bit like mouthwash, blue. That's it, yeah, blue. But it wasn't mouthwash. So you could call that a drug or something. But it would put, it's almost like they would, whenever you go in or out of this place, you get a mind wipe, so you wouldn't remember what you were doing there or anything. I mean, you couldn't completely wipe it all, wipe your whole mind, because there was always some traces in my mind of this happening, but I could never quite put it together and work out what I was doing there. It'd be like my brain would compartmentalise into different compartments, because I was traumatised through the satanic abuse, that type of thing. I'd be highly traumatised, and then there'd be trauma. I had a lot of trauma-based mind control. I think that's the best way of putting it, yeah. So your mind would just compartmentalise and everything, and
but you seem to be aware of this. You seem to have an awareness, which is indication that you have got. You're recalling this voluntarily. You're not needing to go into some kind of trance to do this. This is all coming up quite easily.
I've done a lot of work on myself. I also studied psychotherapy as part of my healing. And I've been able to unlock things out of my brain that were put there through these programs and stuff and things. There was this I've been able to break it down. And funny enough, this is the ironic thing, my ex's natural father, who abused me, was a hypnotherapist. They used him to hypnotise the victims, that type of thing. He's now since passed away. But he gave me a lot of therapy because he was a Freemason. He was in the same Mason lodge as my natural father. So they were both Masons. And he gave me healing because he wanted to make up for what he'd done. So he showed me, funny enough, how to, in a way, kind of break down the programming. Now I look back on it, it's like, oh, that's what you were doing, because he was talking about visualizing cupboards with lots of doors, and then to go into each door, open it, and then have a look at it, that type of thing, that kind of therapy. He was trying to get away from the group. He was trying to, in some way, but you see, they can't just get away. They can't just break away from the group. But he decided to heal me. So he gave me free healing and therapy. And as I said, he's passed away now. And his death was very suspicious.
Such as?
Well, he'd had meningitis before. And he survived that. And then he had a heart complaint. He survived that. Because he also did this healing type. He could heal himself. He could heal other people. Like my adoptive father healed himself from a very life-threatening illness with another group. They did a lot of healing the body, healing from illness, sickness, that type of thing. So so this man, he had he did have a heart problem. He had got meningitis once in his life. Well, it's just that he died in his sleep. He was busy seeing a patient, a client, and then apparently all of a sudden he just fell asleep and just passed away. I just feel it's a bit suspicious, because that week before he was helping me, and he was telling me in private, in a consultation, how he wanted to get out of the Freemasons, get out of the group and leave. But he wasn't allowed to. He told me this. And the week after that, he was dead. So whether they recorded that conversation he and I had, I don't know.
So what sort of, I think we've run for about an hour on this section. Maybe that's a good point to end on this one. We just have a little bit of a break. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is basis 4, section A, and this is basis 1, part 4, section A, because I want to split these things up into something which is a bit more manageable. Thank you for coming on this part, and we'll just have a quick break. Bye for now.